Welcome everybody to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. Today is probably the most meaningful interview that we'll ever do because we're talking about children. I'm a father and I'm so excited to dive in with you and just learn from you today. So thank you so much for being here. Leah's going to read your bio and then we're going to start asking you some questions.
Okay, great. Nice to have you and nice to be with you here and have your audience be exposed to my teaching. So thank you for allowing that.
Thank you for coming. Dr. Shefali received her doctorate in clinical psychology from Columbia University, specializing in the integration of Western psychology and Eastern philosophy. She brings together the best of both worlds for her clients. She's an expert in family dynamics and personal development, teaches courses around the globe. She's written 4 books, 3 of which are New York Times bestsellers, including her 2 landmark books, The Conscious Parent and The Awakened Family. And her new book is The Parenting Map, which we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, this is the new.
Yeah. We're really excited. And I want to thank you, first of all, for what you're doing and what you've done. So you have helped a lot of my friends become better parents. And that is like, what's more important than that, right? And so you have provided a map for everybody to be better parents. So thank you for providing that map. And you've broken this map up into 3 stages, which we want to learn about, and then 20 steps. One of those steps that I want to ask you about first, because we're the Heart Coherence Collaborative, is dropping into the heart. So could you just talk about the importance of dropping into the heart with our kids to start this conversation off?
Sure. So just to give a little backdrop for those who may not know me, this book is all about how to become the most conscious parent. Yes. And conscious parenting is really a new model that I'm teaching because it's different than the old model. The old model, which I call the traditional model, is more about fear and control, shaming your children. Your children are to be seen, not heard. The parent is in the ultimate superior authority. All of that old model comes from a mind-based approach, right? Very heavily based on our belief systems, on our conditioning. And it has very little to do with who we are or who our children are. It's just what we are told to do as parents. And most of us were raised on the traditional model of parenting, where we were to fit into our parents' ideals, where we were to fit into their traditions, and we were not allowed to find our own way. So it was very much top-heavy, top-down approach. You know, I said so, and it's my way or the highway approach. All that of the old way is very much based in the parents' mind, in the parents' way of thinking that has nothing to do with the present moment. It's something that they are conditioned with. And I call that model heavily based in ego. This new model that I'm teaching in this book, The Parenting Map, is about the conscious parenting model, which is attuning to who it is our children are. And in order to attune to the person in front of you, you have to let go your belief systems, right? You can't come to the new person in front of you with a preconceived idea of how things should be based on your conditioning or based on your background. So my approach is very heart-centered because it means that you have to invite in the person before you, not the person you wish they were, not the person they should be, but the person that is in front of you. So that is the premise of conscious parenting, is to attune to the child before you and not come from this place of ego and conditioning.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We love that. Yeah. Anything with the heart, we love. Yeah. So can you just go over what the 3, I know we won't have time to talk about every single step, but just to talk about the 3 stages.
So I wrote this book in a way to be a self-help book for parents. Maybe they don't have time to go to a therapist or no money to go to a coach. So I made this very accessible and I broke it down into a journey, just like I take my clients on a journey, just like that. So the 3 stages are divided into a process, and people need to just do the process. And at the end of the 20 steps, I give exercises after each step, the person will come out a better parent. So the first stage is all about breaking down your mindset. what is the traditional model? Why is it toxic? How were you raised? And how that has had a negative impact in your life. So the first stage is about, teaching people about the dysfunction of the old paradigm, how it is truly toxic and how we need to let go of it. The second stage is about breaking our patterns, why we are acting the way we are, why we are caught up in one negative pattern after the other. I identify the main patterns that we parents fall into. There are 5 patterns, and I talk about them and how we can break out of those patterns. And then the final stage is how can we connect with our children? What does it mean to connect to our children? What are your children's personalities that you need to understand? Because many of us don't realize that our children are not us. We think, oh, we are extroverted, or we are, motivated to study, we are academic, we're athletic. Our children should be that way too. But it doesn't work in that correlated way. Who we are has nothing to do with who our children are. Mm-hmm. So understanding our children is a big part of stage 3 of this book.
Yeah, I love how a lot of it too is like actually work on ourselves. So I personally don't have any triggers at all, but you say in this book how to face your triggers. I'm just kidding. But what is the importance of facing your triggers in how that reflects towards your children?
So, we think that our children are triggers or our partners are triggers. But the way I talk about triggers and I teach my clients is that it's never the outside person, place, or thing. It's never that person, place, or thing. It's always something inside us that interacts with the person, place, or thing and determines if it's a trigger or not. So, for example, if we had a great day and we got into the worst traffic jam, we may not be triggered. But if we had a bad day and it's a small little traffic jam, we're going to be super triggered. So is it the traffic jam or is it something inside us? And of course, children can be frustrating. Of course, they can be annoying, like any human being, like we can be. But children in their essence are not here to manipulate us. They're not here to be bad. They're not here to make our life miserable. But we act as if they're purposely doing these things when they are just being children. They are just being who it is they are. It's because we have issues inside us that we have not resolved, that we don't know how to interact with them, and then we blame them, and then we send them to therapy instead of figuring out, wow, is it something inside me?
Yeah.
And what?
Oh, powerful. That makes me feel so good. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because parents often feel like it's the child's fault.
Yeah.
Oh, my child is this, and my child is difficult, my child is impatient, my child. And it's always on the child. And my work says, okay, even if it is the child, there is something you are doing as a parent that is co-creating this reality that you can change. We only have power to change within ourselves. And I show parents exactly what they're doing wrong that is making their viewpoint wrong. If they were looking at it the right way. And most of us have not gone to school. We've never taken a course perhaps in psychology. We've not understood child development. So because we've never educated ourselves on how children act, what is normal, what is typical, what is normal child development, we really think something is wrong with the child, but often it's just normal development. But because we're not educated, we don't realize that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it reminds me of Cesar Millan says, and he's a dog trainer, it's not about parenting, but that there's no bad dogs, there's only bad dog owners.
Yeah.
Which is kind of it just reminds me of what you're saying, because it is really easy to just blame my child has bad behavior and let me fix him, let me take him to go get counseling or something like that.
Right. Well, our children do come with a temperament. They come with their own essence, as I call it. And that essence can be challenging. Some essences are very easy. They're like butter, and some are like rocks. Okay. But how we interact with it determines if the butter becomes water puddle or does the rocks become an avalanche. We interact with it and we get to, co-create that dynamic, and we underestimate our power in a way. In a way, we have so much power that we tell the kid, the child, do not do this. You better be who I want you to be. But that's never sustainable. True power is in attuning to the child so that we can create sustainable connection and a sustainable influence in their lives. If you just tell the child, change your ways, sure, they'll change, but it won't be sustainable.
I love how like these 20 steps are so powerful. Like you really have laid out a map, and I suggest everyone that is a parent read this book. One of the things that I find important, because I realized it had an influence on my upbringing, is like this perception of who I needed to become. Like there was this idea that I needed to be a certain person. And, you know, you talk about that in this book of like, get rid of, you know, this chase for happiness, get rid of this perception of who your kid should become. I would love to just hear you talk about that a little bit.
So in these 20 steps, I take the parents on this journey to understand how they are looking at this all in the wrong way. And when you begin looking at something the wrong way, it never goes the right way later. You're starting wrong, right? You're starting from the wrong precepts. So some of the wrong precepts, one of them is we parents think that we can create this child because we own these children. And that is so wrong, because that is just a setup for disappointment, for frustration. Your idea that you control this other being is an illusion. It's a delusion, actually. And the more you try to control the person, the more there will be a backlash. Who likes to be controlled? Do you like to be controlled? No, nobody likes to be controlled. So while you may give compliance in the moment, it won't last for a long time, and there will be dysfunction. And also, when you control somebody else, what you're actually communicating to them is that who you are, or how you're thinking, or how you're being is not good enough. And no human likes to feel that way. So it ends up making the child feel a lot of shame, which then has its own backlash later on. The next thing I talk about is this idea that we have to create a happy child. This is also a dysfunctional idea that we parents have, because when we think that we have to create a happy child, then any other emotion that shows up makes us feel like we're failures, makes us feel like we're not good enough. So that's also dysfunctional, right? Also, if you only focus on happiness, which is unrealistic, then all the other emotions that the child feels makes them feel uncomfortable. So we're teaching our children to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, instead of teaching them that there are lots of emotions and happiness is one offshoot, but you just have to be authentic. If you're sad, it's okay to be sad. So we're raising children who are literally terrified of having these different emotions. The third thing I talk about is this idea that parents have that we have to raise successful children. So again, when we have this notion of success in a very narrow way, we try to fit the child into that box. And again, if that child is not temperamentally like that, then they are going to feel ashamed. And then they're going to not even try. So in all ways, when we come from the wrong mindset, we ruin the relationship. And I show over and over in every step, you know, how you're ruining it and what you need to do differently.
You talk in the book, and we were naming some of what might be dysfunctional patterns. In the book, you talk about getting out of those loops and how you can step by step get out of those. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because it's so hard to stop these things that feel automatic.
So many of us are operating on autopilot and we don't realize it, especially parents, because we are told that we are amazing, so we don't have to look at ourselves. So in stage 2 of this book, I talk about our different patterns, and we have 5 emotional styles that lead to 5 patterns. The first emotional style is of anger. That leads to the pattern of being a fighter. The next emotional style is of anxiety. That leads to the emotion, the ego pattern, or the mask, I call it the mask, of the fixer. The third one is of attention seeking, and you get into the ego pattern of the feigner, somebody who feigns. Then is avoidance, that's the freezer, and then is abandonment, and it's the fleer. So just by giving this framework, and I give subtypes, and you can be one type and then another type, like I'm a fixer, then I'm a freezer. So you can be different types in sequence or altogether, I don't know. But by reading about these patterns and by looking at the subtypes, you become aware of, wow, yeah, that's right, I have been doing this, I didn't realize. And then you become aware of the patterns in your partner and your parents and your children. So I show you how you can use these patterns that I've identified to not only become more aware of your own self, but also of your intimate others. So becoming aware is the first step. And then you make micro changes, slowly. So I tell parents, okay, maybe you did your pattern of fighting for 20 minutes yesterday, but today let's do it for 18 minutes. So you can't just snap out of a pattern. You have to go micro steps, and you have to go a little bit out of your comfort zone each time. When you take somebody too far out of their comfort zone, again, like we take our children out of their essence, right? Now, these are our patterns over years, 30 years, 40 years. So I'm not asking parents to immediately get out of their patterns. You take micro steps out of the pattern, but each micro step will create a change. Then you feel empowered. Then you make another step. You see the change. You feel empowered. And that's how people can change their whole life patterns. I'm a therapist. I work with people and I help them incrementally to make changes. And that's what this book is. It's 20 steps. Each step is an incremental change towards a big change. And the big revolution is a different type of relationship and maybe a different type of you and a different type of child.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as I was hearing you speak. And it's so amazing, because everybody wants their children to grow up to be amazing. And so you can use this book as motivation. You want to be a better parent. You want to be a conscious parent. But as a result, you get a whole better life, right? And one thing that I wanted to talk about, I always like circling back to the heart, because that's what we do here at the Heart Coherence Collaborative. You talked about dropping into the heart with your child, and you have a specific process called vent. Could you get into that a little bit?
So the reason why dropping into the heart is so important is because, like what you said, we all want to raise connected children. We all want to raise empowered children, but we don't realize that what we're doing is from the head. So there's a disconnect, right? What we want and what we are talking, what we're behaving, how we're saying things is anti-heart. So this book helps you get back into the heart. So one of the techniques I call, it's an acronym VENT, V-E-N-T. It's just one way to connect, right? So V stands for validate. So we first must validate our children. We first must accept if they're saying, I'm unhappy. We can't say, oh, why are you unhappy? Or that's so silly. Or what's wrong with you? Why are you unhappy all the time? That's not going to make us less unhappy. It's going to make us more disconnected. Yeah. We all want to be validated. I hear you. I understand. What you're saying is this. Do I hear you correctly? What I'm hearing you say is this. Everyone wants to feel that the person is first acknowledging where they are at. And this is the mistake we make as parents. We think we know better of where the child is. We're like, no, you don't know. I know what you're feeling. I know what you should feel. I know what you should think, because we think that they are our property. So validating someone allows them to feel close to you, allows them to feel connected to you. The next thing is empathy. Try to imagine what that child is going through, not what you're going through. Maybe it's something you don't struggle with. Maybe you loved swimming, so you don't understand what the big deal is. But for your child to enter the water may be a big deal. How can you decide what is a big deal for your child just because they come from you, right? They don't have all your genetics. They didn't get raised by the same parents you did. They didn't grow up in the same way you did. So how can we impose our way on our children? So empathizing means getting into their body, into their struggle, and saying, I hear you. This is a struggle for you. I honor your struggle. I understand your struggle. And that is so powerful in terms of making a connection. Then N stands for normalizing and, neutralizing. It's okay. You're not crazy. Yesterday I was with a client who's in her 80s and she had lost her son 30 years ago and she was depressed. And I told her that's normal. That's not something that you're crazy about. You lost somebody who was very important to you. And I understand that's a normal reaction. So again, when you make people feel like they're normal, and it doesn't mean that you are allowing all sorts of behavior. So if your child spent $300 and they're not supposed to spend the money, we first try to understand why they did it, right? I talk about going beneath the behavior, asking why. So once they say, oh, because I really like the shoes, you want to yell at them, but they were $300. What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Instead of doing that, and you can do that later in a different way, first say, I understand. You didn't mean it. I understand that you felt like all your friends had it. You wanted to belong, right? So first you validate. I get it. I understand you wanted it. I feel your struggle, empathize. You normalize. This is normal. Most teenagers would do this. Most children would do it. They want to fit in. I understand you're not crazy. And then if you want to correct, I always say connection before correction. So first connect, and then you can say, okay, now you need to pay me back. So, how are you going to pay me back? Can we create a plan? You can do work for me. You can get it out of your allowance. You can give it out of your next birthday money. This is too much for me to spend. So we need to create a plan. But you're not making them feel bad about it. You're teaching them. And they're going to hurt when they have to pay out of their pocket money, right? So there's a natural consequence. But you're not losing your shit, which creates a disconnection. And then T, VENT, so validate, empathize, neutralize, normalize. And then T stands for transform. Transformation means you show them how they are growing, not to transform into something that they cannot be, but you transform the situation into power. Look how much you're going to learn from this. Look at the positive of this. Look at what is going to benefit you. And you show them, look, last time you could not even do this. This time you're doing this. Last time you got a B minus. Now you got a B plus. Wow, that shows growth. So you find a way to show them that there is a transformation and there's always a growth. So that gives people this sense of, okay, I can work on something. It's not fated. It's not predestined. I'm not a bad person, period. I'm evolving. And we all want to feel that. So why can't we give that to our children?
That is so powerful.
Yeah. Can you talk about the underlying 3 reasons why children misbehave?
Sure. So there are 3 reasons why children misbehave. And if we can understand this, we will have so much heart-based compassion for our children. Number 1 is lack of skill, which means that their brain has not developed yet. Like they've literally not developed the parts of the brain to allow for pre-planning, for motivation, for emotional regulation. They've not yet developed that part of the brain. So asking a 3-year-old to share what they feel is so stupid. What do you feel? The child is like, I don't know, I hate you, right? Why are you asking a 3-year-old what they feel? They're showing it. 3-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 23-year-olds, young people show how they feel. You don't have to ask, how was your day at school? You don't need to ask. They're showing it. Why do we need to ask? Because we feel like they should report back to the boss. Why don't you observe? You'll be able to see if your child had a good day or not, just by the relaxation of the shoulders, just by how they greet the dog, how they eat their food, how they say hello. You can tell. You don't need to ask anything. But we make our children talk to us and explain things to us when they're not capable sometimes. They're not able to handle all the emotions. So lack of skill. The second one is lack of life experience. They've not had enough practice. So if they forget their things or they lose their things, it's because they just haven't lived long enough. They're not stupid. They're not dumb. They're not evil. They just haven't practiced enough. But every time you make them feel dumb, they're actually going to become dumber and dumber and dumber because they're going to dim their initiative. They're going to be so scared to try that they're going to dim their light. Number 3 is lack of worth. And that means that they are already feeling some shame. They're feeling some pressure. They're feeling the fear of your disapproval or failure. So they're already dimming themselves down. So whenever your child misbehaves, if you can understand lack of skill, lack of experience, lack of worth, let me have compassion, then you are actually going to let them open up versus shutting down.
What's the proper way to handle when your child misbehaves in regards to punishment? Because punishment is something that a lot of parents do. You talk about in this book why that's bad. I think this is very important to bring up.
Because again, you can't punish somebody for something they don't have. Right. You can't punish them if they don't have the brain power to perform that function. You can't punish them because they've not lived long enough, and you can't punish them if they're feeling bad. So punishment is never the answer, right? Would you like to be punished? Would you, if you went late for a birthday party, would you like everyone to be told that, oh, this woman came late, let's punish her, let's shame her in front of everyone? No, you want somebody to understand you. Otherwise, you'll stop talking to that friend, right? You won't go to them anymore because you're so afraid of being shamed. So punishment is another way of shaming our children. I call it bad parenting. I call it lazy parenting, because punishment never works. It works to manage the behavior just in this moment, but it's creating a whole lot of a cascade of other behaviors that will come back to harm the person in the long run. So you have to really be mindful, yelling, shaming, spanking, screaming, taking away things, grounding your children, put it on your fridge as a no, 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 no. Every therapist will tell you, every child developmental psychologist will tell you, those things never work. And not only do they not work, they create a domino effect of more negativity at the end of it. So it's never a good thing.
So how would a parent, if they've taken all of those things off a list, have some kind of discipline in their house? What did you do with your kids? What do you recommend?
There's so many things. First, when the bad behavior happens, you need to take a pause and be calm. And then you need to connect with your child. Again, I hear you, you didn't mean it, you forgot, you got, I understand you. I get you. I'm on your team. You don't have to worry. But now we need to create a plan. And I talk about the power of creating win-win situations. Okay, you want to come home at 4 o'clock. I say you need to come home at 11 o'clock. We have to work together, because I'm your parent. I need you to have 8 hours of sleep. No, mom, you're too old-fashioned. You are just old. Okay, I may be old, but now what? We have to work together. So come with a proposal. Otherwise, we cannot continue this way. So I taught my daughter, for example, to always come with a proposal. She's a master negotiator. Okay, here's my proposal. Don't say no right away. Here's my proposal. And what that does is it empowers your children to know that their voice is heard. There is a way. We will negotiate. And until we both are not happy, we don't go forward. So we teach our children that they're very important. Their voice is very important. And we begin practicing this from a young age. So when they're 2 years old, we make them choose their socks, yellow socks or pink socks. When they're 7 years old, we make them choose scrambled eggs or fried eggs. We don't give all the choices in the world. We don't say, let's go to Paris or London on the weekend. We don't act unreasonable, but we give them as many choices within our influence. What makes sense? We make them choose. Why do we do that? Because it teaches them to go within, to access their own knowing, to speak up, to assert themselves, to feel valued, to feel honored, and then they will go out into the world expecting that, hello, I am valuable, I'm honorable. Why are you not treating me properly? So if you want to raise children who have self-assertion, you need to allow them to assert themselves in the house, which is a pain in the neck, right? But what do you want? That's what I mean. From our heart, we say we want empowered children, but from our mouth and our mind, we disempower our children. So we have to back up what we want in our heart through our speech, through our behaviors. And that's what this book teaches. So everyone grab a copy for your mom, for your mom-in-law, for everyone, so that we can all change the tide from traditional parenting to conscious parenting.
Oh, wow. That actually just gave me the chills. And, the truth is that so many people watching this are going to be blown away, because you just radiate the truth about how we should operate as parents. So I'm curious, for people that are new to this is your 4th book. What are the other 3 about? Because a lot of our followers are going to want to just dive in entirely now.
Well, they should start with this book. Okay, so just
cool.
go here, because you always want to get the most latest of what any author has written, because it comes with more wisdom, right?
Yeah.
So this book is the key. But this was my first book, written 13 years ago, and this is what began the revolution and began changing the way. And then my next book was called Out of Control, Why Disciplining Your Child Doesn't Work and What Will. I love this book. Then I wrote this book, which I love. It's called The Awakened Family. This is amazing. And then I wrote a book for women. If you're a woman and you want to read a powerful book, it's called A Radical Awakening. This is a stunning book. And now it's this book. So this is my fifth book. But if you're a parent and you want to change your dynamic with your children, then this is the book to read.
Great. And how else can we support you? What can we do? How can our followers get in touch with you? What's going on in
Well,
life?
they can find me on Instagram at Dr. spelled out Dr. Shefali. You know, honestly, just buying this book and sharing it with your friends, that's the way to support this message, because I cannot do it alone. I've been doing it pretty much alone, but now parents are picking up on this message and spreading it. So that's the best way you can help me.
And you have a community too?
Yes, a beautiful community. I have an annual conference. I have a coaching institute. So if people want to train under me, they can come and be trained and do this work with other parents. So I have my annual conference, coaching institute. I have a women's community called Luminous. They can join that. I have lots of courses on my website. So they can go to drshefali.com.
drshefali.com. All right, everybody, go to drshefali.com, buy the book. Thank you so much for this opportunity. That was mind-blowing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Sending love to everybody.